This is, this is not even about perfection, because I think a lot of people get it twisted. This isn't even about panic. I'm not trying to make you feel overstressed or high cortisol right now. This is just about respecting biology and, chemistry, organic chemistry. This is just how it works, right? I still go out to eat sometimes, and I know damn well that my burger and fries were cooked in vegetable oil. I don't let it stress me out, but I also prepare myself. So during the weekdays, I offset my omega-6 fats. Before it went into your bloodstream, it went through an engine. Before it touched your salad at the Olive Garden, it lubricated factory machinery. Before it showed up in your kids' cereal breakfast bars, or even cereal altogether, it was considered an industrial byproduct. And now, it's everywhere. Not because it's better, not even because it's healthier, but because it's cheap, right? It's subsidized, shelf stable, and extremely profitable. And that's where this story actually starts. Now, what am I talking about? I'm, of course, talking about vegetable oils, seed oils, because seed oils didn't take over your food supply by accident, right? They didn't just all of a sudden show up out of nowhere. They were built into your food supply. Government money, corporate interests, industrial farming, and really a moral marketing campaign that made you feel like a bad person just for questioning it, right? I mean, who's basically going to talk shit on why vegetable oils are unhealthy because vegetable, right? The fact is, this isn't even just about nutrition, right? This is about power. And I think once you understand really how seed oils and vegetable oils got into this conversation and got into the food supply, you'll understand why animal fats kind of lost the war until, newer developments turned the tides, right? So let's just talk about, why seed oils are everywhere, right? So I'm talking about things like soybeans, corn, canola oil. Those are the big three, I would say. And these aren't just foods first. Like they aren't just, you can't just straight up eat some canola. These are commodities, right? They are grown is what's known as monocrops. So that basically means thousands of acres, the same plant or the same crop in this instance, right? The same genetics, which we'll get into a little bit, but it's just over and over. It's on a massive scale. Now, why? Why is it a monocrop? Because monocrops are really just easy to mechanize on a large scale. It's the same process for the same plant across a wide variety, right? It's easy to spray. It's easy to patent even genetically. It's easy to subsidize, right? And in the United States and many Western countries, corn and soy receive billions of dollars from the government in the form of subsidies every year. What is a subsidy? So a subsidy is if you grow corn or soy, then the government pays you as the farmer more to grow that specific crop, that monocrop, right? So if you raise, cattle on a pasture, in comparison, you're mostly on your own. You're not going to get much subsidies from the government on that. So that alone kind of tilts the entire food system, right? And why is that though? Like who out there are actually preferring vegetable oils? Like who asked for canola oil, right? The truth is it's anyone looking to cut costs. You, the consumer, the corporations, soybean, canola oil, they're all cheap. But seed oils are not cheap because they're efficient or, even healthy or, something's going to save us money. They're cheap because taxpayers pay for them up front. You, the taxpayer, you pay to subsidize these monocrops. And the government subsidies are your tax dollars already paid going to the farmers growing these monocrops, these huge farms, huge conglomerates, right? So you've already paid for it once. And the government incentivizes, mountains of corn and soy to be produced, to be farmed. And you, of course, we need to put it somewhere, right? So you don't just feed all of the corn to humans, right? You end up processing it. You make it an entire assembly line, right? The oils, the corn syrups, the soy protein, even the industrial fillers like soy lecithin, for example. That's in almost everything. Seed oils are essentially the trash turned into treasure, so that many companies and people use it because it's cheaper, because it was already paid for, right? The subsidies. So this is what I think, the part that people don't like hearing, because animal fats, they are more local. They're more perishable. Like, they will go bad and you'll know it when it's bad. So animal fats are harder to store. They're harder to ship globally as well, right? They're harder to centralize and just scale outwards. You cannot factory produce grass-fed butter in the same way that you can produce soybean oil or canola oil or corn oil. Animal fats just don't scale well, right? Especially if it's from healthy animals, right? Like regenerative farms. Seed oils, they scale perfectly. You can grow tons, you can harvest tons and process it tons. So what do you do if you want total control of the food supply? Well, you demonize the thing that you can't industrialize to a bigger extent, and you glorify the thing that you can. That's how you control the industry. And this is exactly what led to the saturated fat panic, right? So suddenly butter is dangerous. Even people thinking coconut oil is dangerous because of saturated fat. Tallow is evil. Lard is for hillbillies, right? And even my Mexican ancestors stopped using lard. Meanwhile, the replacement oils, like even Crisco, which was a shortened name for actually crystallized cottonseed oil. Crisco, right? Stay with me. These seed oils were easily scalable from plant waste products, right? This is the waste. It's using every part of the plant. So when chemically treated, they become like zombie fats and are shelf stable for years, and they ship globally, right? Because they never smell bad, because they've been deodorized and processed to heck. Whether the fats turn rancid or not, you won't know because they've been deodorized. So this wasn't done because of nutrition science, right? This is completely detached from it. This was just logistics. So think of it in terms of this and why it's scalable. And then, of course, science was used to promote seed oils over animal fats to justify, these are healthier. That's the consensus they wanted. So let's go a layer deeper into this moral angle and the vegan psyop, frankly, because I've seen a huge uprising in veganism over the past few decades. All the documentaries on Netflix, companies catering to the vegan movement, Beyond Beef, Beyond, all that crappy meat, even oat milk, right? It's an easy way to leverage the vegan crowd to play into their hysteria. So plant-based, it sounds clean, right? It sounds pure, it sounds ethical. Sounds like modern, like this is the new way, high tech, Animal fats, they make them sound dirty. They make it sound like primitive, which in this way is a bad thing. They make it seem violent, right? It's very emotionally charged. And this is perfect marketing, especially to women who are very emotionally, off kilter. So it's reinforced by vegans who wear vegan on their clothes, their hat, their shirt. Basically is like a justification for how they act. Like they're like, well, I'm vegan, that's why. So for corporations, you can see this was an easy layup with marketing. Corporations don't even have to prove that, seed oils are healthier than animal fats. They just had to imply that animal fats were bad. for XYZ reasons. And then, let the vegans kind of fill in the gaps with their high emotionally charged environmental aspects, right? And once morality gets introduced into a conversation about nutrition, critical thinking is just done, right? It completely has left the room. So nutrition science and morals, they don't mix. And, you question like highly processed seed oils. If you're the guy that's saying vegetable oils are bad, you're anti-science. That's what they label you, right? If you eat butter visibly, you must hate the planet, right? Except here's the irony, right? Because even industrial monocrops, that type of farming destroys the soil, right? We know this. It kills the biodiversity. It relies on, pesticides, herbicides, and it consumes like insane amounts of fossil fuels to transport these large-scale monocrops. Tons of local ecosystem and wildlife is harmed. The moles, the voles, and other like rodents, they're completely killed off. But to vegans, they don't care, right? Grass-fed, organically raised animals can actually regenerate the land. They build the, nutrients back into the soil just by living their life on a pasture. They support the ecosystems. Regenerative farming and local farmers markets, that is the way. But of course, that doesn't like fit on a cereal box. There's no way to really market the heck out of it. So seed oils needed that virtue shield, is what I would call it, essentially. And the vegan ideology absolutely gave it to them. So let's go a layer deeper. I want to cover modern soy and corn. They're actually not even traditional plants. They're quite far from nature, right? So they're GMO monocrops, genetically engineered for namely usually pesticide resistance, the Roundup, glyphosate, all that. The high yield, like a huge yield of the monocrop, the uniformity. So they change the genes and select these plants for these reasons. And uniformity, of course, matters because the industrial complex needs sameness, right? Nature is very diverse. It's not going to conform to sameness. So at the end, these oils don't exist because they're healthy for humans, right? Just wrap your mind around that. They exist because they're optimal for industry. They're optimized for long shelf life, the yield from farming, no flavor. There's no smell. The shelf life, of course. You can't tell if it's spoiled because it's been deodorized. So if those fats go rancid, probably aren't going to know it. So you can ship these all the way across the planet, store them for years, really, and fry foods with them endlessly, over and over. You can reuse the fryer oil, and people aren't going to know, usually. So animal fats, though, they oxidize. It's pretty freaking obvious. They're not factory processed with additives. They're not hydrogenated, deodorized. When they spoil, you will know it. So the animal fats really force accountability and sourcing and quality. Animal fats are closer to nature, right? Think about this. Even just based on volume, what seems more natural to you, fats churned from a gallon of cow's milk, or fats churned from the seeds of 2,000 pounds worth of soybeans, or however much they use. I don't even know, but it's an ungodly amount. Seed oils basically remove that accountability from nature. They remove the natural proportions of what someone would consume. And of course, now they're in everything, right? Any food product with a barcode is probably going to have seed oils or vegetable oils. You go to any meal, any meal you have at a restaurant, they're going to be using vegetable oils, seed oils, usually just to cut the costs, right? That's just a matter of fact, especially for right now with inflation and everything, right? So when people ask, why are seed oils everywhere? Well, it's not because they won the health debate. Absolutely not. They won on cost, control, bullying, demonizing animal fats. They won on scale. They won on the subsidies, right? With the government subsidies. And of course, the marketing. So just because they won on all these fronts doesn't mean they won the nutrition war, so to speak. We kind of, when they put it into the food supply, they tried to gel it over with people and make them convinced that they're healthy. But this is where the biochemistry begins. I'm going to go into it. And, spoiler, the body was really never meant to have seed oils in the proportions that we have them. That's my opinion. So let's talk about what happens when you ingest seed oils, because I think this is what a lot of people don't understand. When these seed oil fats basically infiltrate your cells, right? The seed oils, just from an outset, they're polyunsaturated fatty acids, or some people call them PUFAs for short. Polyunsaturated fatty acids, right? So PUFAs contain what's known as multiple double bonds. And double bonds, when you think of that, think of like instability within the chemical structure. So the more double bonds, the more fragile it is on a chemical aspect. So here's the main difference, because there's omega-6 and omega-3s, right? These omega oils are both PUFAs, but omega-3s, are very, very healthy, like super healthy. But this is where people get it confused, because omega-3s are actually more fragile than omega-6s. Omega-3s, have a few more double bonds in the chemical structure, so to speak. So why aren't omega-3s villainized? Instead it's the omega-6s with the vegetable oils, right? Here is the context. So omega-3s are almost never used as cooking oil, right? Who's using fish oil to cook with, right? Really, it's because vegetable oils or omega-3s, they come from fish. So that makes it an animal fat, right? No one in their right mind is frying French fries in fish oil. Like, it just seems wrong. But the reason is because if it goes rancid and you use it, you're going to be able to smell it immediately. But seed oils, on the other hand, the omega-6s, the PUFAs, omega-6s, remember, they're deodorized and chemically stripped. So when they do go bad, when you're frying with them, you actually can't smell that molecular damage and that rancidity of the fats taking place. So omega-6 seed oils, a lot of them are partially rancid before they even get poured out of the bottle, right? And then it gets even worse. They become even more unstable because they're being heated up, right? So you don't want to heat up your omega-3s. But the other PUFAs, the omega-6s, your canola oils, they heat them up. You get all the aldehydes, the lipid peroxides, and these aren't nutrients, right? These are the damaging compounds from when these fats go bad. The PUFAs that get rancid and oxidized. So when restaurants use that fryer oil for multiple batches of French fries or chicken nuggets or whatever it is, day after day, the rancid and broken fat compounds become even worse. And this should be like a real kitchen crime or fast food crime, so to speak. This is the worst. This is what really, I think, is the real mechanism. So what makes these fragile vegetable fats so bad when they enter their body? That's what you're probably wondering right now. So brace yourself, because of course this is going to go into, organic chemistry type class science a bit. So think of those reused vegetable oils and seed oils as kind of secretly partially oxidized, right? Despite not smelling so bad, or really not smelling like anything at all, in my opinion. They don't really taste like much either. Those oxidized fats create what are called free radicals. It's not like a skateboarding move or whatever. A free radical is essentially an electron that's missing from the molecule. And when it comes down to chemistry, you know that anything unstable has to be stabilized somehow. So these free radicals are missing an electron, and when they come into contact with something that can give them an electron, or they steal it, it will. So these free radicals steal an electron from somewhere in your body down the line once they oxidize. Could be from your cell membranes in your veins. Could be stealing an electron from the mitochondria in your liver cells, for example. It could be stealing an electron from your DNA in, the nucleus of whatever cell across your entire body. Now that molecule being stolen, having that electron stolen from, becomes unstable and steals another electron nearby. Think of it like a chain reaction, right? And you can tell this just imbalance causes just tons of damage and inflammation, from almost kind of like being electrocuted or like set on fire a little bit. So your cells, remember, they are made of fat. Your brain is mostly fat. Your hormones are made and synthesized from fat. Your immune system, all run by all this different kind of fat and these lipids, these membranes. This is why oxidized fats drive that inflammation. This is why oxidized fats drive insulin resistance. This is why it's linked to things like Alzheimer's and neurodegeneration, heart disease, of course, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Cancer risk, right? Damaging the DNA, causing cancer risk. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This isn't theory. This is basic biochemistry. But everyone loses their freaking mind when you demonize vegetable oils. So, these PUFAs from seed oils, the omega-6s, right? Vegetable oils, we know that we get too much of them from our diet at this point. But we also know that the omega-3s are good, but they are still fragile, right? They're still a PUFA, but they're good. So why do omega-3s not cause these issues? Well, to put it simply, your body has special enzymes that handle the omega-3 oxidation process, the breakdown of it. So when omega-3s are fresh and not broken from like heat or being cooked, they aren't rancid. Your body can naturally use those enzymes and convert them into special compounds. And they've actually named these. They're called resolvins and protectins, just to name a couple. I think there's some others, but these are the big ones I can remember. So these actively resolve inflammation. So that's why they're called resolvins. Omega-6s, they can't do this when they're oxidized naturally in your body. So omega-6 oxidation creates the signals that extend inflammation instead. So the same, fragile fats from soybean to fish oil, but very different biological outcome depending on what kind of PUFA it is, omega-3s or omega-6s. But, only, the good effects from omega-3s only happen when it's not damaged. So rancid fish oil, not going to help. It's going to make it worse. Overcooked sardines, not going to help. Going to make it worse. Warm stored fish oil capsules, not going to help. It's going to make it worse. So you lose the benefit and it's worse. So you don't want to, intake any rancid stuff. So now you know the chemistry. Let's talk a little bit more about the history of animal fats and how it was hijacked specifically. Some of you guys know the history, but I'm going to go through it really quickly. So even though you just learned about the healthiest animal fats, omega-3s are like the antidote to protect against vegetable fats. This is how seed oils specifically really hijacked nutrition science as a whole. So this, of course, did not happen by accident. This was, reinforced by this guy in the 1950s. His name was Ancel Keys. You may have heard of his name before. He also promoted that idea that saturated fat from animals caused heart disease. That's what he thought. That was his hypothesis. And his famous 7 countries study was cherry-picked, fundamentally. So this means after, say, like analyzing a dozen countries across the world, he was scrutinizing their diet and the heart disease rates, right? Those 2 metrics, just basically. But he excluded countries that didn't fit his theory that caused, animal fats caused heart disease. So he excluded the ones that didn't prove his hypothesis. So he left us with 7 countries that he could represent his hypothesis to prove himself right, and maybe whoever was paying him. Maybe. So this narrative led to the low-fat craze, the low-fat dairy, low-fat guidelines, like low-fat labels literally appearing on candy, for goodness sake. Like, this was just plainly the demonization of animal fats, right? And this laid the groundwork for the explosion of seed oils. So consumption went up after the fact, but this is the real problem that happened later. So the studies done that tested Ansel Keys' hypothesis, their impacts really failed, just plainly. These studies, they were kind of buried. The first is the Minnesota coronary study. This was over 9,000 participants in like 4.5 years. And this was a randomized control trial taking place in like a mental institution, so they could control what they're eating, right? They replaced saturated fat with corn oil. And what were the results? Well, the people who were eating the seed oils, the vegetable oils, had lower cholesterol, but higher mortality over time, more arterial plaque even, higher cancer risk. And, that goes against what most doctors, these days say, right? Most doctors will say, more cholesterol is worse outcomes. And once again, another study, the second one, let's go to the LA Veterans Study is what it's called. They basically found the same pattern. So it was lower cholesterol in the people who ate the vegetable oils, the seed oils, but they had worse outcomes with heart disease and overall mortality, right? And these studies were long-term, but they were ignored because really they threatened the mainstream narrative that was all set up, this big marketing push. The lobbyists in government, they dismissed them. They found out ways to try and debunk it. Scientists were paid off, especially by the sugar industry, to basically just look the other way, right? Lower cholesterol did not always equal better health, because cholesterol was never the fire starter. It was never the real problem. The real problem was inflammation, right? And that brings us plainly to you, right? This is why seed oils catch up to you, and it happens later on. So most globs of like fat from seed oils don't cause damage overnight, not mostly. It usually will take months to years for these kind of like zombified fat globs to infect you. So once they end up building into your fat cells, the cell membranes, wherever it is, these omega-6 PUFAs, they have a half-life of about 2 years in your tissues, in your body, because your body makes itself from what we eat, right? So this means the damage accumulates quietly, right? And this is why most short-term studies that these vegans or like seed oil apologists cite all the time, they don't show real damage at play here when it comes to consuming seed oils. This process needs to be accounted for much longer, because that's when everything goes bad. And these studies, they're freaking expensive and difficult to do long term, especially with how the average person is, exposed to seed oils constantly, right? It's hard to disconnect from vegetable oils if you go out to eat. the process of seed oils being, integrated into your cell membranes across your body, that takes time. And eventually they oxidize, months to years down the road, depending on their stability, right? This causes that silent firestorm of inflammation. And before you know it, you're wondering all of a sudden, like years later, why do I have such bad brain fog? Why am I having joint pain all of a sudden? Why do I have insulin resistance being built up? Why are my mitochondria powered down, right? Why do you have heart disease? And no one connects the dots. So this is not even about perfection, because I think a lot of people get it twisted. This isn't even about panic. I'm not trying to make you feel overstressed or high cortisol right now. This is just about respecting biology and, chemistry, organic chemistry. This is just how it works, right? I still go out to eat sometimes, and I know damn well that my burger and fries were cooked in vegetable oil. I don't let it stress me out, but I also prepare myself. So during the weekdays, I offset my omega-6 fats with omega-3s from sardines. That's been my newest habit from the past year. This is what I feel is like the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the time, I eat really good whole foods. I use heat-stable fats like ghee, lard, tallow, and even real butter, like grass-fed butter. I think people need to get their omega-3s from food like sardines and mackerel. They're super cheap, and there's really no excuse. Sardines contain virtually no mercury, so there's none of the downsides. And I actually crave the taste of them now. So I think people just got to stop bathing their, metabolism in these zombified seed oils. This isn't even like a carnivore versus vegan issue. Like, this is just real nutrition, right? This isn't even politics or government funding. It's just chemistry. It's biology. This transcends all of the stupid shit people argue over. This is literally your future. And I think once you understand this, then you don't have to fear it. Like, there's no fear mongering anymore, because you can prepare for it. You just need the standards, and you need to, of course, follow through with that real nutrition that's going to provide you the protection and baselines against that small percentage that everyone goes through, right? I think once you do that, you will feel the difference. I promise you. Like, my mind is so clear these days now that I've integrated sardines every day, taking omega-3s seriously for the first time in my life. So this is just my experience, and I'm going to leave it at that. If you have any questions you want to ask, or any comments, any questions, any future topics you want me to cover on this channel, post down below, and I'll leave you with that. So do the experiment yourself. Give it months to years. Be very diligent about it. How do you feel when you at least cover those baselines and stop buying the freaking vegetable oils? It just blows my mind every time I see someone buy that big tub of vegetable oil. Like, I hate to see it. I'm not going to push my beliefs on them, but maybe I should, right? I just know for me that, I'm conducting my own N=1, and I know that I'm a lot healthier than everyone out there, right? So I implore you to do the same. And that's it. I'm going to leave you with that. So thank you guys for letting me ramble and storytell a little bit. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.